Brent Novoselsky, born and raised Chicago, Illinois. Went to the University of Pennsylvania, got my degree from Wharton. Was lucky enough to be signed by the Bears to a free agent contract back in 1988. Got cut a couple times on the Bears, was lucky enough to get signed back, played half the season there, played in the Fog Bowl, played in the championship game, one game short of a Super Bowl. Wound up going Plan B free agency to the Green Bay Packers, which I grew up in Chicago, so that was a rough one. But they paid me
That'd be fun, right?
double my salary, and wound up being there for an off season. They cut me, and week into the season got signed by the Vikings. Stayed there for 6 years. Played special teams, tight end. Played in over 100 games, made over 100 special teams tackles, caught a few balls, caught a touchdown on Monday Night Football, the last game of the season in 1989, to put us in the playoffs, knock the Packers out of the playoffs. And my last tackle was November 27th, 1994. And that was a tackle that knocked my disc in my neck, and decided that I needed to take my Ivy League education and move on after 7 years of playing professional football. And that was, 25 years ago. Doing okay now.
Okay, well, we'll kind of go in order, but I kind of tend to jump around, which is because my brain doesn't work that well sometimes. Let's go to how you get from Chicago to Penn.
Yeah. So I was going to go from Chicago to University of Michigan. I'd always want to play for Michigan. I'd gone to a camp there in high school and met Anthony Carter, which was kind of neat because I wanted to play with AC on the Vikings. But Michigan was always where I wanted to go and play. I wanted to go to business school there. They recruited me. I wasn't going to get a scholarship. They were giving me a preferred walk-on status, whatever that means. But I wanted to go to the University of Michigan. I wanted to get into business school. They called me and said, look, we can't offer you a scholarship at this point, but your grades are good enough to get you in. We'll pay your application fee. And I was thrilled with that. I said, that's wonderful. I'll learn my way on. Well, they never paid my application fee. So I was calling the coach. This is back in the day without voicemail, right? You call in busy signal, or you call and you get the voice, the voice message or whatever. Never called me back. I got a letter from the admissions department at University of Michigan and said, look, we haven't gotten your fee. We're going to have to take down your application. I said, well, football's a dream of mine, but I know I have to have a background because, I'm a Jewish kid from Skokie, Illinois. I didn't think I was going to play in the NFL. I'd hoped that, but I knew I had a longer life and I wanted to get that business degree. So I sent in a check myself. About a week later, they said, hey, congratulations, you got into the University of Michigan. About 2 days later, the coach called me and said, hey, congratulations, we want to get your housing set. And I said, I'm not going to your school. You lied to me about the application fee. What else did you lie to me about?
What else is you going to be right?
Fortunately for me, in the interim, the University of Pennsylvania had found me through my co-captain on my high school team, a guy by the name of Nick Bruston, who wound up going to Brown University. But like anything else, he's a smart kid. And once the coaches at, the Ivies get a hold of you, it's just like any other league. When somebody's interested, all of a sudden everybody becomes interested.
That works, yeah.
So Penn came to talk to Nick, and they were watching film, and I was pretty good on the film. And they said, well, how are his grades? I said, well, he's top 10 in his class, not 10%, top 10 out of 500 kids. They said, great, we want to talk to him. So I had I forget what I think I was in a home economics class, and they tapped me on the shoulder, said, the coach from Penn is here. Would you like to miss class to talk to him? And I said, absolutely.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Not that I didn't like class, but home economics wasn't really the highlight of my day. So I went and I spoke to him, a guy by the name of Don Dobes, great coach, great motivator. And he let me know that, they had about 15 guys, most of the guys from the Catholic League, coming out to Penn. And it was just a different experience. The program had just gotten a resurgence. Jerry Burns was the coach. Jerry Burnt was the coach. And they were making some really interesting things happening. Plus, it was the Wharton School of Business, which is best business school in the nation.
Right.
So that really took it to heart. When everything collapsed about Michigan, I said, okay, I'll go out and I'll see Penn, which was in Philly, which I had no idea where Philly was. But I flew out there and saw the campus, saw Franklin Field, which to me was just, it was amazing with the brick. It reminded me a little of Wrigley Field. But the campus was cool. It was just a cool experience, and it was an experience for me to kind of stretch myself and see if I could do it. So when Michigan kind of fell to the wayside, and by the way, do you know the application fee was to Michigan at the time? Any idea?
I'm thinking about that time, a few $100.
It was $15.
$15, right?
Yeah. So I
Right.
didn't go to University of Michigan.
Over
because
$50, right?
It was more of a principle thing than anything.
Sure. All right.
Worked out really well. And then all of a sudden the Ivies came after me and said, hey, we'd like to they're looking at my film. Hey, we'd like you to take a trip. The only other Ivy that I really talked to was Brown. Called me one night, and the coach from Brown said, we want to bring you out to Rhode Island for a visit. Kind of cool. I've never seen Rhode Island. He said, well, the only thing we need is your application. And I said, well, hang on a second. I think I remember seeing your application somewhere. Hang on, put the phone on the side, went out to the garbage can because I'd just thrown out a bunch of stuff. Going through it, and there's the Brown application, and I'm literally in the garbage with a flashlight, and I'm looking through the Brown application. And I don't know if you remember, Ivy applications were a lot of essays,
right?
And I didn't really like writing essays, and there were like 12 essays needed. And I kind of put it down. I grabbed the phone. I said, Coach, I'm not really interested in your school, and just hung up the phone. So it was Penn, it was Michigan, or I could have gone to Illinois and just been a frat guy. So wound up going to Penn, challenging myself, graduated from Wharton, played very well. There was all Ivy. We had some great teams. My junior year, we went undefeated for the first time. Penn's got a long history. Ben Franklin was a kicker on our team. Now, I think I wore his helmet though. But no, it goes way back. And football, back into the 1800s, it was the first time the program had gone undefeated since 1904. And, we've had Penn had some really good years in the late 50s with Chuck Bednarik.
Right.
But the Ivies, back when we joined the Ivies, Penn had a rough go until the early 80s. And then turned it around and became just a juggernaut for, 20, 25 some years, so it was exciting. I thought I had a chance to go pro, but it was not like the most realistic of chances. We had a quarterback my junior year by the name of Jim Krachickia, and in 1987, you might remember the strike year with cab players. Well, I was on Monday Night Football my senior year at Penn, because Jim Krachickia was the quarterback for the New York Giants on their scab team.
Right.
And it wasn't pretty because these guys had like a couple of weeks of practice and
right.
He had a great arm, but the center kept snapping the ball over his head, and he was diving on balls. But they did show the highlight of that prior year when we beat Navy at Annapolis, and I caught 3 touchdowns, and they showed a highlight of Jim throwing me a touchdown. So I was on that, on Monday Night Football. But thank goodness I didn't come out until the next year in 1988. And, the Bears basically called me. It was a free agent call. The reason that they called me is networking. So all those kids out there, anybody in any situation, use who you know.
Right.
The reason that I signed with the Bears, the reason that I played 7 years, was an opportunity that was given to me basically because of my great uncle, Ben Novoselsky. George Hallis passed away in the early 80s.
Right.
George was supposed to leave the team to his son, Muggsy. Unfortunately, Muggsy passed in the late 70s. So the only one left was his daughter, Virginia Hallis, who married Ed McCaskey. So that's why the McCaskies own the Bears now. Well, my great uncle helped settle the estate for George Hallis and became very good friends. So they would go out to dinner every weekend, and he would constantly bring up my name and say, "Hey, I've got this great nephew who's an unbelievable player." Now I was a sophomore at Niles North High School, Jewish kid, Jewish Jewish school, and he just kept bugging him for 6 years, I guess. And finally, I think Ed, just to give his friend a bone, they signed me to a free agent contract. So when everybody else was walking down the aisle at commencement in Philadelphia, I was jumping on a plane to go to minicamp with the Bears. They signed me I got $1,500 signing bonus, and $60,000 was the minimum. So I got the minimum salary. I showed up for camp. They gave me number 98 as a tight end. Apparently 101 wasn't available. But the problem with having 98 as a tight end was you're eligible. And back then, Ditka made all the calls from the sideline, and he ran the tight ends in to give McMahon the plays. So you'd have to listen to the play, the formation. You'd have to run in. First thing you had to do was go to the official and report as an eligible player, and they'd have to announce number 98 is eligible, and then I'd give McMahon the play and then go from there. So it was kind of rough in camp doing that, but I made it through. Got cut the last cut of camp, and was on the street looking for a job. And then 3 games into the season, Emery Moorhead broke his leg. Turned out to be Emery's last year, who's still a very good friend of mine. And I get a call from the Bears that basically said, "Hey, what are you doing? Come on in next week." And I came in. They offered me my same contract and said, "Okay, you can't wear 98. We've got 2 other eligible numbers. You can wear 89 or 83. And for those of you, historians out there who knew back in, the 85 Bears, the Super Bowl, this is 88. 83 was Willie Gault. And the only thing that hit my mind was, I don't want to look slower than I already am. There's no way I'm wearing 83. So I said, "Give me 89. Of course, as I'm putting 89 on, I realized immediately that was Coach Ditka's number. And, he was all for it. He was a big fan of me wearing his number. And, I loved it. It was great. The other great thing about it is I played a year for the Bears, and they wound up retiring my number, which was very cool. So I've got a very good friend of mine, Bruce Herron, who was a linebacker for the Bears back in the late 70s, early 80s. And he actually wore number 51, which was Butkus's number. So the 2 of us go out at night, and we hang out at a bar. We're the greatest trivia question at the bar is the 2 of us have our numbers retired by the Bears. What are our numbers?
That's fantastic.
So, I mean, it's a little different than I would have liked it to be. I would have liked them have them retire my number because of me. But, hey, it's a childhood dream. You play for your childhood team, and you get your number retired. So, phenomenal, way to go about it. And then plan B, free agency, which, I'm deeply involved with the union because when we came out, it was just after the strike. We disbanded as a union for 5 years. So I played 7 years. 5 of those years, we didn't really have a union per se. And we were fighting against, try to get all the benefits and try to get all these things that our guys have now. And I haven't stopped with that. I've been involved with that because we do have, this latest collective bargaining agreement. We actually stepped up, and the retired players, hey, I got to give kudos to the existing players, Richard Sherman and these guys that are part of this, the active players now. They didn't have to reach back and give us what they gave us. We were asking for 3 asks, and we got 4, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, the collective bargaining agreement in 2011, we got a bunch of stuff, but nothing like they gave us. I mean, this was truly unprecedented. And it's the right thing to do. You're talking about $1 billion industry, and, make your guys whole, make your guys better, that came before you. So just absolutely thrilled with that. But back in 88, 89, there was something called Plan B free agency, basically, not to get into the whole history of collective bargaining agreement in the league. It's very interesting, but I lived it. They basically had no union because the union has to disband because they could have just forced. Well, they actually did wind up forcing a Plan B on us because they had Plan A, which stunk, and then Plan B, which wasn't much better. But they just inserted that and said, "Look, you've got to live with this." Plan B free agency basically say it allowed the teams to protect their top 47 players of a 53-man roster, and you got injured reserves, probably 60 guys. So the top 47, and it didn't hurt my feelings. I wasn't the top 47 guy on the team. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. Well, what Plan B free agency actually gave us was the guys that weren't were able to go around and actually be free agents for a window of time, about a 2-month period. So I went around just trying out for teams, and I knew I had the contract. The Bears had offered me, and they said, look, we've got your minimum contract here. Green Bay came in and said, okay, we're going to pay you $25,000 and give you $120,000 base. And I'm like, well, that's more.
Right.
It didn't take, the Wharton education.
Yeah. That kind of helps a little bit. Yeah.
That's more money. The other thing is, I was making $60,000 basically. All my money was going to buying tickets for my friends and family to go see the Bears games.
Sure, right.
Because everybody, of course, assumes, well, you get tickets, and we do. We used to get 4 tickets to home games and 2 tickets to away games, and then we'd have the ability to buy tickets. It's kind of like a police officer fixing a ticket for you, where they don't go fix it, they just go pay it. So I wound up paying for a lot of tickets. So I figured Green Bay, 180 miles straight north, maybe it would stop some of my family and friends from coming up, which I never really got to find out because I went there all off season, worked my butt off in training camp. The first scrimmage, I got laid out over the middle, and one of the linebackers trying to make the team put his helmet in my rib, broke 2 cartilage in my rib. I missed half a day of practice. So I missed the morning practice to get x-rays. They found it was broken, but I could still play. I wore a flat jacket, couldn't breathe. Lindy Infante, the end of that practice, kind of called me out for missing that morning practice, and wound up cutting me a couple weeks later without even a word. And God rest his soul, he's no longer with us. But when Mike Ditka cut me, he spent 20 minutes telling me, first of all, thanking me for the hard work. Second of all, telling me all the things I needed to work on. And I thought it's a terrible, terrible thing to go through when you get cut. But when you get cut like that, there's a guy that really knew what it was like to play and, made you feel good about it. And again, he told me, stay in shape because you never know, we may need you. And they did. With the Packers, it was completely different. It was my position coach who basically couldn't tell me why they cut me. Said, well, you kind of slowed down after that scrimmage. I said, well, I'd broken cartilage after the scrimmage. So anyway, they let me go. Tony Mandrich, who at the time was a $6 million man, highest paid, they signed him after they cut me, and he actually lived in my apartment, which was incredible because it was above Sterling Sharp. And I called Sterling that day and said, hey, is Mandrich in my apartment? He goes, yeah. I go, he didn't even change the furniture. I mean, we were renting the furniture, but he kept it. So, I spent about a week looking for a job, and then the Vikings called. And I went up to Minnesota with literally a little bag with my contacts and I think a change of underwear, maybe. And I went up there expecting to try out and then come home. And they tried me out. They kept me there all day for like 10 hours. And then they said, well, we're going to sign you. So well, what does that mean? So, well, we're going to sign you the contract that you had in Green Bay, and you're going to start practicing with us tomorrow. I said, oh, okay, what is it? You're going to stay at a Days Inn. And I said, well, I don't have any clothes. I don't have my car. I don't have anything. Well, fortunately, that Sunday we were playing the Bears in Soldier Field down in Chicago. So Jerry Burns said, Coach, is it okay if I leave the game, go home, get my car, drive up, and kind of miss the ride home? He's like, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. So I wound up doing that, which is kind of crazy because my dad was pretty cheap, and he wound up parking in Chicago. He wound up parking kind of far away. We had to take a bus. So I'm jammed on the bus, sweating from just playing a game. We beat the Bears, and I'm sweating. I got my Vikings bag with all my stuff. And literally hanging on, and there's all these Bear fans around. I'm just kind of hanging on and going to where his car's parked. So, I mean, that was my life, but wound up making it there. Played against the Packers. Tony Mandrich was just a monster. This guy was just mammoth. I mean, you go back and look at the Sports Illustrated cover, and just a steroid, just a freak. And when we went to play the Packers, we wound up playing them in Old County Stadium in Milwaukee. And I remember being ready, jazzed up for the kickoff and looking down, and there's this big 77. Mandrich is in the middle of the field. Back then they did the wedge.
Oh, and he's the wedge buster. Okay.
No, I was the wedge buster.
Oh, you're the wedge buster. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they had,
they
had big linemen, and they grab link arms, and you had to pick. I mean, you don't go right up to him because he'll kill you. So you got to kind of maneuver around, and that was my thing. Is I played at 6'2", 245, so I was big enough to overpower the little guys, but I was also quick enough to be faster than the bigger guys. Until my last couple years in the league, when guys caught up and it got a little harder. But with Mandrich, it was great because he's there in the middle, and I ran as fast as I could at him, and I gave him a move, and I got around him. But before I got around him, he just like took an uppercut swing at me, and I ducked around him. I made the tackle. I threw the guy down. I jumped up. I got in his face. He's apologizing to me the whole time because, I don't know what he was doing, but I'm cussing him out. I'm using every word in the book, and my guys are grabbing me and pulling me back, and I'm cussing him out. I got my hand in his face, and I whispered to my guy, I said, "Don't let go of me because he'll kill me." So that was great. We beat the Packers pretty soundly every year, but that year in '89. It was us and the Packers, and we had a Monday night game, which they don't do anymore. But back then, the last game of the season was Monday night. It was Christmas night. We played Cincinnati, and this is Cincinnati Bengals that were good. I mean, they had just played the Super Bowl and lost in the last couple minutes to San Francisco. So they were good, Boomer Esiason and everything. And wound up playing on Christmas, and all we could do was kick field goals. And they came back, and we were up by 2, and it was like 4 minutes left to go in the game. We had Herschel Walker, we had Anthony Carter, we had Steve Jordan, we had all these guys, and 4th down on the 2-yard line, and they called my number. I went out like I was going to block and went to the corner of the end zone. Wade Wilson tossed up a ball, just beautiful pass. I caught it over the shoulder, got my both feet in, and that basically won the game because we were up 9, and we were up 8. And they didn't have a 2-point play
at that point, right?
So we won the game, and so that was the moment. That was my key moment, was that touchdown catch, and that propelled me to another 5 years at the Vikings. Got 7 in the league, and just great times. And during that time, I was doing financial planning because, again, being a Jewish kid from Skokie, didn't plan on playing in the league that long. So I wanted to have a backup, and now I've been doing financial planning, insurance, investments for 25 years now.
Okay. Well, let's take a jump back real quick. All right. Yeah. So you get to Penn.
Yep.
And Jerry Burns, who ends up being your coach again, the same Jerry Burns with the Vikings, correct? Oh, no, different Jerry Burns.
No. So I misspoke. Yeah, Jerry Burnt, B-E-R-D-N-T. One of the best coaches I've ever had. Smartest guy. He actually went to Rice and Temple and coach, but he was the coach that turned around Penn's program. Just a phenomenal guy. Yeah, Jerry Burns, completely different guy.
Different person. Okay, all right. So, but you're at Penn, and I'm going to try and tie in some of the stuff that's happening now. So is it – and you had connections, which is great, but let's say, for example, the season that we just announced that the Ivy League is postponing or moving back their spring or their fall season to the spring. Yeah. Hopefully. Right. If you hadn't played that senior year, just looking at it hypothetically, do you think things would have been different? I'm just trying to get a perspective on everybody, not just yourself, but the free agents, the people who are coming up, and the union and all that stuff. Is that a completely different landscape now?
Yes, entirely different. I mean, it's a completely different world anyway. But, look, the odds of me playing pro football were slim. So everything had to go right. I mean, I literally, I think about all the percentages and for me, that's life though.
Right.
You can only control what you can control. So my focus was always work as hard as I can, be in the right place at the right time. I lived on the bubble. I mean, every article that used to come out in the preseason, I was on the bubble. So I had a chip on my shoulder, and that chip on my shoulder made me go out there and just play all the special teams I can. You look at film, I ran a 4.740, but you look at film and I was the first one down on kickoffs. I was the first one down on punts. I was in the right place at the right time. I'd make the tackles. I'd bunch of fumbles. For me, it was just studying and understanding, and then just play. When I was a little kid, I got chased around the car by a big dog. And I remember having all of a sudden these superhero, I ran as fast as I could, just out of fear. And I used that in the NFL because I ran out of fear, because the fear of, these are very big men, very big, strong men that, they get a hold of me. They get me in their sights. They blow me up. And the biggest thing you had ESPN at the time. I'm like, I don't want to be in front of millions of people, just getting
blasted
so hard. Yeah, that I pee my pants. That's the fear. That's why you always go to the bathroom before the game starts and before the second half. Is I just don't want to pee my pants. It's the biggest thing on TV. Don't do that. But fear was a huge driver. And then you just talk about percentages of what needs to fall into place. Emory Moorhead doesn't get hurt. My working a financial planning job, I'm not coming back playing. The crazy thing, when I went up to Minnesota, the reason they signed me after the first year is they had a tight end by the name of Carl Hilton. And Carl Hilton got hurt the first year. Well, I didn't realize this until years later. Carl Hilton, his injury was his neck injury. That's what stopped my career 6 years later. No idea. And this stuff just happens. And there's just all these things that have to fall into play. Now, if they didn't, maybe something else would have. If you prepare yourself, there's windows of opportunity that occur, and you just jump through that window when you can. Would it have been different? Would it have happened this? Probably not, but who knows? I mean, you look back on the touchdown that I caught to win that game. A couple plays prior, Rick Fenney, who was a great fullback for us, fumbled the ball. Was it Rick or it might have been Herschel? One of the two of them fumbled the ball. And it was a fumble, but they did a replay. So you're looking back at it going, Tim Crumry, who was it should be in the Hall of Fame. He picked up the fumble for Cincinnati, and they didn't give it to him. So that's where my opportunity came. And, things happen, and you just got to take advantage of stuff when it happens and be prepared. And that's the story of life, I guess, is just, again, just you make it as hard as they could to cut me. So you do everything you can in your control, and the stuff that's out of your control, you can't control.
What you can't do anything about, right? Yeah. And I think we tend to forget that because at this point in time, we have so many of what we think are options of what we can get to and can't get to, but things haven't really changed that much. It's just we have more stuff in our face. Like you said, you keep working hard and keep moving at it. And, if they would have come up with $15, you might have went to Michigan and who knows what would have happened then.
Well, and the crazy thing about that too, the crazier story, I didn't even get to that part, but, I didn't go to Michigan, but yet when I signed with the Bears, my roommate for the away games was Jim Harbaugh, who would have been my quarterback in Michigan.
Right.
So, Jimmy taught me a lot. He's a third string quarterback then. So the greatest things he taught me were you get breakfast in bed the day of a game. So you get room service and you take the last bus. And that Jim was great. Most competitive guy I've ever met. And at that time, again, third string quarterback, he was competitive at everything, like checkers. And here's a guy that if he was losing the checkers would toss the board, like a 6-year-old kind of. Yep. He had that kind of competitiveness, but just an absolutely phenomenal athlete. One of the best basketball players, racquetball players. Just the guy was crazy talented and really good guy. Jimmy's a great guy. He's kind of gone the other Uber way of, competitiveness and great coach. He's got to beat Ohio State though, but yeah. So I mean, life's got a way of working itself out. I mean, there's, you just work hard and do all the right things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really does work out. You just got to look at those opportunities. You can't look at the stuff that was lost.
Well, having spoken to several people and to a defensive back in particular, basically the comment was, you get beat, you get up, you move on.
Yeah.
Because if you dwell on that one miss, that one touchdown they scored on you, that one tackle you missed, well, you're going to miss the next one. They're going to score again. It happened. You remember why it happened, but you don't dwell on that it happened.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, which is very interesting, is you play a game and you come out of the game and everybody says, well, how'd you play? And you can get a kind of a feel like, I think I did okay on this and that, but I'm not sure. And until you see the film on Monday, you really have no idea. And usually what happened was the plays that I thought I did great on, I did okay. But the plays I thought I stunk on, I was still okay. Because you don't know what else is going on. There's 11 guys on your team, and they're all doing different things. And the reality is you're so honed in on what you're doing, you want to have an idea what's going on around you, but you're so focused. You got a guy in your face, literally, and you're fighting with that guy. And, it's okay, you do the best job that you can, but you really don't know until you watch the film. So during a game, all you're doing is just, hey, next play, let's get on. And even after the game, it's okay, let's learn from what we did, but let's jump on now to the next play. And you'd figure that would help my golf game. It doesn't, because it drives me crazy. And, golf is awesome, but it's so hard to transition from football to golf because it is, you got to forget, you got to do that. But in football, if things aren't going well for you, you bear down, you try harder, you get in there and you run harder and you run faster and you clench up. And in golf, the opposite has got to be true, because you clench up and you go hard, you're going to screw that up. So to me, I love playing golf now because it's the mind. Yes, I can physically do it. I can make all those shots, but mentally, can you get out of your own way? And to me, that's the best part of it. But in football, it does teach you, it's next. It's like, okay, if you are thinking about what you did in the past, you're going to get your butt rolled over in this next play. So you better focus. And that's the other thing too, is you got 11 guys on offense. And if all 11 guys don't do their job, play's going to fail. So you're reliant, on the people on your right and the left, and they're reliant on you. And that's why it's the greatest team sport out there. There's just nothing like it. In basketball, one guy can just go off and win a game. In football, it's much harder to do that. You have to have all 11 guys doing their job. And that to me, that's the greatest part about this game is this is what it teaches you.
Well, and I think the carryover that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that now when you get into the real world, quote unquote real world, when you get to the real world, when the thing that I love about football, especially, but sports in general, other than golf, because golf is just too crazy to think about, but is that you have to do what you do while reacting to what someone else is doing.
Right.
And that is that's the part about golf, is you're reacting to, oh crap, I hit it 4 feet again. That's not a good reaction. But the reaction is, you can be the best football player you can be, but if you just say, I'm going to run this route, I'm going to turn here, and the ball's going to be, and it's not there, or they change coverages or whatever, you still have to make adjustments as you go. And so the best plan that you can have, and as a financial planner, there's the segue there, as a planner, you can have the best plan possible, yet you still have to make adjustments to pandemics, market changes, economics, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the beauty of football, is that there is so much preparation that goes into it, that you're preparing for everything that you think you can see, everything that you think you may see, and audibles and things. You're preparing, but when it comes down to it, you need to react. So where so many guys miss on it is they prepare, and they're still thinking about it. The guys that made me the most nervous were the guys right before a game that had their head in the playbook.
Right.
I always said, look, if you're not ready by the time you got to go out there and play, we got an issue. You should be well enough prepared so that when you go out there, you're just reacting. And that's the big difference, is that you want to be so prepared that you take away the thought process and you just go and you just do it, which is difficult. It's not easy, but that in life, that's what we need to do. And that's where you need to get yourself, and to be so prepared, so overly prepared that you now can just take away that conscious thought and just do what you've been doing. And that's where the mind and body are so important. And that's where there's just such a tough disconnect when you're done with the game. And I think, there's so many different issues that come up when guys leave the game. But I think one of the main issues is you're never going to get that back. You're never going to get that peak of mind and body working together, blood, sweat, tears, emotion. I mean, just from the core of your body, where, that high, that feeling of there's nothing that I'm going to work harder for or go through as much to get to my end goal. And then that disappears. And then it's like, oh, what do I replace that with? And you can't really replace it. Right. It's tough. But, work, family, life, you bring the same kind of instincts. You bring the same focus that, okay, let me work on things that I'm not doing well. And that was the whole thing, is just try to play a perfect game. Okay, what, pass protection, my left, my right, what routes, what aren't I doing well? How do I improve that? Where am I not strong? How do I improve all that? And then taking that more to life is, you kind of got to piece it out, because football allowed you to bring all of that together and paid you extremely well, and, got you things, I never bought a shirt or, clothes when I was playing, because they'd give us t-shirts and hats and buy us dinner. And, we were making a lot of money, and it's the greatest time in the world, but it also a very tough time. I mean, because look, you're a commodity, and you're going out there every single week, and you've got millions of people watching you and people critiquing you and say, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Well, okay, you go out and try that. You got a split-second decision, and you're running down the field, and you got a helmet on, and somebody's about to light you up. You got to make a quick decision. Look, that's a tough way to go. And by the way, you're the product, so that they can discard you at any time, and you're done. These guys should make as much as they can. I don't look. I think these guys need to make what they can, because I see a lot of my buddies now, that former players that just having problems cognitively, physically, and we're trying to do stuff to help them now in that regard. So yeah, they got to get what they can, because it's 3 years average career, and get what you can, make what you can, and they've done a lot better helping our guys out. But it's still a rough game, but I love it.
Okay, I have a question about that in a second, but I've got a two-parter that might be a one-parter. Is it, and I apologize for using this phrase, because I used it like 17 times the last show I did. Is it safe to assume there's no such thing as a stupid football player?
No. It just depends. So you've got to be smart to play the game. Now, certain positions lend themselves to being a little smarter. Offense, you need to be able to count. You need to know your left from your right. Defensive linemen, there's some of them are pretty smart. Others, literally, the linebackers have to go up and hit them on the butt to tell them which way, left or right. But no, in order to play this game at that level, college or pro level, you do have to be intelligent. You have to know what's going on. Like I said, I mean, look, you're preparing, but yet all of a sudden they bring something you haven't seen, and you got to know how to adjust to it. You got to communicate. There's just so much more to it than just that, I'm going to beat my guy to a pulp. But that's there too. So that's an interesting part of it. But I forget who it was. I don't know, Muhammad Ali or said something, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Right. And I think it was Mike Tyson.
Yep. Tyson might have said, I don't know, did he say that? But that's the other thing is you got this plan, but all of a sudden you got that physical aspect of it where, something's hurting on your body. And when I played in the NFL, something always hurt on my body. And the first couple of years, it's okay because you're young and you kind of deal with it. It gets better after a couple of days. And then your last couple of years of your career, it's not getting better till like game day. And it's rough. It really does take a toll on your body, but you've got to overcome that. And, the cool thing about that was overcoming all those issues of physical issues and just letting your mind kind of take over. My best games, I was injured. I was hurt. I never played injured. That's the you play hurt. You play hurt, you're a hero. You play injured, you're stupid. So that kind of was the kind of the breaking point there. But no, there really isn't a dumb football player. They're just you get leveled out. College, you could have somebody that's just a freaking Hercules. Just got all that genetic ability. He can overcome. Maybe not knowing, maybe not being able to read defenses, maybe not knowing what's going on. But you can't, in most colleges, you can't do that anymore either. You've got to know what you're doing, and definitely in the pros. So you're right. Yeah, there are no stupid players.
Okay, now, and that answered the second question, so I won't even bother about that. Now, when we get into, you said you're laying the groundwork, and now what you're doing now, how important is it, as you said, for the Richard Shermans of the world, to not only understand where you are, but where they're going to be and where the players after them are going to be? How does all that meld together with what you're doing?
Yeah, that's it. That's the extreme importance of that. And I didn't believe it as I first started. When I got out of the league in 1995, I spent 5 years just kind of away from everything. I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I didn't want to work out. I just wanted to get away from it. And then Emory Moorhead was running this Chicago chapter and said, "Hey, I need a treasurer." And I said, "You can't find another former player that's Jewish?" He said, "No, you're my guy." So I handled the money. And no, we really revamped what we were doing. And the key with that, and I'd always kind of looked at it and said, okay, it's great. We got our guys back, kind of get the former players, and you kind of get a little bit of the locker room feel, and you can help your guys. But on a national level, didn't know how much impact we were going to make because everything was voted on by the existing players, by the active players. So as former players, and Gene Upshaw said this before he passed, he said he doesn't represent the former players. He represents the current players. And D. Smith, he kind of came out and said, no, we do represent the former players, but it's through the current players that we do that. So they did a really good job of getting us together with the active players to say, hey guys, you're going to be here. A lot of you quicker than you think, but all of you are going to be here at some point. So let's, give us a voice, give us an ear, and we'll tell you what our issues are. And that was a really cool thing, is that we opened up that dialogue. They gave us a couple of seats on a committee when we were talking about collective bargaining. Now, we didn't have a vote because you can't, because only active players can have a vote. But we had a voice. And, I thought that was important to get maybe one of the things through that we wanted to get through. But the fact that we got 4 things on the last collective bargaining agreement, I mean, we got everything we wanted and then some. They updated our pensions. They gave, prior to 94, guys that had 3 years in weren't vested, only 4. And now after that, it was 3 years. They went back and gave the 3-year guys pensions. They gave us healthcare money. They're giving us access to healthcare in any NFL city. All 32 cities are going to have healthcare next September available to us and our spouses. It's more than we could have asked for. It was what we asked for, but the fact that they came through really speaks volumes. And it may just be that, they've got plenty of money and they realize they've got plenty. They obviously need to get as much as they can because, we're not taking from the owners, we're taking from the current players. We get a portion of what the current players have. The current players have to carve out. That's what makes it so incredible, is that we're not fighting the owners to tack on more for the retired players. No. The owners are saying, look, here's players, here's your split, here's what you guys get. Active players are the ones that say, okay, we're going to take
Here's
this
how we're going to split it up. Yeah.
and give it a form. And for them to do that, incredibly intelligent, incredibly thoughtful. And, you know, it was led by guys like Richard Sherman, who've been on the committee for years, who's you know, very, very smart, very well-spoken. You know, these guys are the real deal. And couldn't tell you, you know, the respect I have for these kids and their kids. Just, well, first of all, physically, they're just crazy talent. I mean, I'm 6'2", you know, I was 245, I'm about 220 right now. But you go on the field and you see some of these guys, and the tight ends now 6'7", you know, 290,
Right.
running 4.40s, jumping in the building. Yeah. I could not have stepped on a field and played with these guys. But, you know, we go back and we harken back to the good old days where, you know, you watch film and, you know, you didn't have the extracurricular stuff. You didn't have the showmanship. You played football, and guys respected each other. And I think now it's a little more showy and flashy, and it's great. You know, go ahead. I mean, back in the day, we had the helmets on. You come on you'd have a little card. You know, you get your playing card, and they wouldn't show the helmet. They'd show the face, but you know,
right. That's the only time you saw your face. Yeah.
Yeah, you never see the face. You never knew these guys. Now you're knowing these guys more. They're branding, which is smart. So I got a lot of respect for the current guys, and the fact that, again, this collective bargaining agreement was just really incredible.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think the average person doesn't understand. And because I've heard this, well, they're millionaires. Why do they need a pension plan? And you mentioned, well, what is the average playing career?
That's right.
Yeah. And then that person, and that's more than the guys become millionaires. If you have a 47-man roster, there aren't 47 millionaires on the team. So no. That is the part that I think people tend to forget. And as you said, in that 2 or 3 year span, how much wear and tear is going on in your body and your mind.
Right. And then the other problem that we're trying to really impart on our guys is use the NFL as a springboard. Don't keep going back to the NFL with your hand out. You're done. But use it to better yourselves. To, you know, people want to meet with you because you played in the NFL. Utilize that in your business now, and utilize that as a way to market and network yourself. And I think guys are getting that more and more. But the older guys, you know, they didn't make much, and you know, the money's gone pretty quickly. So it's all good stuff. You know, we're working on it, but yeah, the current league is completely different than what we went through.
Well, how old were you when you realized, when you were told you were done, or your injury told you you're done?
29.
29. Okay. Now, at that point, do you think, well, I'm only going to live another 4 years, so I can live off the NFL and what, I mean, at that point you go, I got a few years left to go here. Now, let's say you play, you know, you come out and you're 23, 24, you play 3 years, you're 27.
Yeah.
There's still life to live. There's
still things to do. There's a lot of life to live. And the problem is, up until that point, I'm 29, half of my life was football.
Right.
So you're ingrained in it, and it's your entire life. I mean, you got both feet, you are in it, and all of a sudden it's gone. And, you know, it's like being a train on a train track, and the track goes away. You know, I mean, you're told when to wake up, you're told when to eat, and it's comfortable, you know. All of a sudden it's free reign, and it's rough. That's why you got to get, you know, got to get guys help to kind of manage that transition. So they've done a good job. The NFL, the NFL Players Association, the Trust has done a really good job in that transition.
And you can only play so much golf.
Well, you can play a lot of golf.
Okay, you can only play so much good golf, I guess you should say.
Oh yeah, good golf's limited. Yeah, that's definitely limited.
Well, Brent, I appreciate you being on. I really do. I appreciate the stories. I appreciate the fact that when you had such a fondness for what you did, yeah, you're still moving on and doing something positive for everybody else. So I really appreciate that. My pleasure, Frank. I appreciate it. And also people ask, and it's quick because I got to jump on another call. But people say, well, would you let your son play this game?
And the answer is yes. I let my son play. He was a right tackle for Western Michigan University under PJ Fleck, and played 5 years. Had broke his ankle twice. Had 2 shoulder surgeries, and the stuff that he took out of football. I mean, the fact that Western Michigan went undefeated. His would have been his junior year. Went to the Cotton Bowl. The things that he learned from football. He's now running his own businesses. It's amazing. It's an amazing sport. It can be cruel at times, but the sport itself and what it teaches is it's incredible. And we need to have football, for those kids that need it.
And that's life. It's difficult, but you got to keep plugging away.
That's right.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure.
All right.